Be willing to jump out there and take the risk, but also be content if it doesn't immediately make a hit. Be content, stick with it, and stay with it long enough to where you can find the success.
Korie, I can't wait to get into how you lead, but first I got to ask you, you are a celebrity and a lot of big things are always happening to you. What was your last pinch me moment, that I can't believe it's happening to me moment?
Last pinch me moment. That is an interesting, okay. This wasn't my last, but this was like one of the biggest. So, okay, when I was a kid, I was a Kenny Rogers fan. I loved Kenny Rogers. I was in his fan club. Like, I was like this little 8-year-old kid in Kenny Rogers fan club. Well, I actually got to meet Kenny Rogers at a big awards show, and he had twins that were, of age to watch Duck Dynasty, and they were huge fans of the show. So it was like a big moment for me because, Kenny Rogers, I told Willie he was like my first man with a beard crush.
That's perfect. Now way before Duck Dynasty, 50 years ago to be exact, your father-in-law, Phil Robertson, started a business called Duck Commander. Give us a snapshot of the business then and what it looks like today.
Yeah, so whenever Duck Dynasty started, we actually had our 40-year anniversary on an episode. So a lot of people think, oh, this big overnight success. But no, we were 40 years in. And whenever I came into the family, actually, I was a kid when I first went down there. And they were just making their duck calls literally out of a little shed right next to their home. And it started like that. Phil had this idea to make a better duck call, and he got it patented. He made a double reeded call, which had not been done before. All the calls at that time were single reed, and just started doing it. And year by year, a little more money. The fun thing that one of the fun stories that he did back in the day, he had a little tape recorder where he taped live ducks, and he taped him blowing the duck call, and you couldn't tell the difference between, and he had it like scientifically tested to see, the difference in the duck call and the live duck, to prove to people as he kind of made his runs and went door to door trying to sell his duck calls, and just prove to people that like scientifically it's the most duckiest sounding duck call out there on the market.
I love it. That's such a humble beginning. And what's the business like today?
It's grown a little bit. I'll never forget whenever the warehouse, so. Yeah, just a little bit. The warehouse that we're in now, actually, where this little podcast studio is, I remember when we bought this warehouse, it was huge. We thought, this is massive. We will never fill it up. We're in this like little corner of all of our products. And now, of course, we have other warehouses that have more of our product. And this has become, we have a store and a museum and all the things going on. So yeah, life changed a little bit since those days of driving around the truck selling duck call door to door.
And 30 years ago, you married Phil's son, Willie, and joined the Robertson family. For someone who hasn't seen Duck Dynasty on television, describe the Robertson family for me.
Well, so the Robertson family, it's 4 brothers, and it's a family business. And so you've got these 4 brothers, their wives, and then you've got this crazy Uncle Si, which he was kind of the wild card of the whole family, because I feel like everybody has a crazy uncle and could relate a little bit because Uncle Si was the crazy uncle. But Phil and Kay are the matriarch and patriarch, and they ran this duck call business really out of their home. The boys grew up helping in the duck call business. It was a family business through and through. And when we started the show, we actually started the show on a smaller network called the Outdoor Channel. And, we were like, hey, you think people would want to see more of what we do behind the scenes, like as a business? Because that channel was more about just hunting, just straight up like watch a deer in the woods, watch the ducks in the woods. But we were like, we think people want to see a little bit more about what we do and how we run it as a family. And that's really what kind of took off for us.
I understand that it was your idea to do the television show. When did you first get involved with the family business yourself?
It was. So in the early days when we first got married, I needed a way to make a little extra money. So I was an art major. So I did these little hand-painted duck calls, limited edition. I had this idea. So I was like, I'm going to hand-paint these duck calls. And I had Phil sign them. And I did like 500 of them. And I sold them to, different different little, stores around the country. And I actually found just recently I had typed it on a word processor, a little, asking people to buy my hand-painted duck calls that I made back in the early days. So that was my first entry into it. And then as Willie actually wasn't working for the family business after he finished college, he was running a summer camp, managing a summer camp, and we were having our kids and doing that. And I think we just kind of looked over at the Duck Commander family business, and Phil and Kay were a little bit tired, and everybody had been doing it for a long time, and we were like, we have some energy. We feel like we could get back in here and really do something. And so the first thing we did was to start the website, duckcommander.com. Phil did not know anything about websites. He was like, if anybody wants to buy a duck call, they can just pick up the phone and call me. That was his mentality. And we were like, we think people might start buying things off the internet. So we should probably do a website. So Willie and I started doing duckcommander.com just out of our house. We put the phone number for our home phone number on the website, and we'd get calls day and night, and we'd take the orders and package them and ship them right there from our home. And then we started a little club called Duckaholics Anonymous, and we were like, we're gonna, yeah. So I wrote the newsletter, and we decided, these are some hardcore fans. Like, these people really love duck hunting. So we started this club, and we called it Duckaholics, and we gave them a newsletter and a T-shirt and a sticker that said you were part of the club. And it just kind of grew. Willie and I, as we were watching it, we were like, these people really are invested in Duck Commander and in what we're doing. Like, how can we do more? How can we give our fans a little bit more and a little bit more? And it just kind of grew from there. Yeah.
So when was it? Do you remember when you had this vision to do the television show? And was it a hard sell for the family to buy into?
A little bit. I do remember. So I was actually watching the show American Chopper. If you remember that show, American Chopper, it was about brothers who made motorcycles. And I was thinking, why am I watching a show about motorcycles? I don't care about motorcycles, but I was like, oh, it's a family. It's about the family business. And you see this interaction between the brothers and their dad. And then I start looking around, and there's American Chopper products everywhere. All of a sudden there's T-shirts and it's all this. And I was like, I wonder if we could sell more duck calls if we, made a show like this. And I was like, I looked over to Willie and I said, I really think we could do a reality show about your family. And he was like, who's going to watch that? And I said, well, babe, your family is not normal. Like, y'all are kind of interesting. Like, you're not normal. And he was like, what? So we actually went down to Phil and Kay and told them we had this idea. And Phil was like, who's going to watch this? I don't know. I will say, before that, now Phil had the idea to film his hunts. He started making these DVDs called The Duckmen of Louisiana. It was a series. He did one year. He sold it to Walmart. The next year, he didn't do it. And then they were like, that actually did pretty well. You should do that again. So he had been, since about the 80s, he had been making these DVDs of their hunts where they just film what they did during hunting season, but it was all in the blind, for hunters, just for hunters. So anyway, I thought, what if we expand that and, tell a little bit more of the family story? And so I actually sent emails out to some different production companies and got zero response, and thought, well, I think it's a good idea. Maybe we'll see if we can figure out how to make this happen. And we were at our big industry trade show one year, and Benelli Guns, we had a sponsorship deal with Benelli Guns. One thing that Willie is so good at and was so good about whenever we kind of came back into the business, Phil was kind of this loner. Like, he did his thing. He had his invention, he lived in the woods, and still, that's how he is. But Willie's a people person, and so he had started building these relationships with a lot of different other people in the outdoor industry, and we had a relationship with Benelli Guns. They were sponsoring us and doing some things with us at that time, and they had just hired a guy out of reality TV. And so they asked for a meeting, and we went and sat down, and he said, I had this idea. I think your family could do a show. And I was like nudging Willie. I was like, see, I told you. So that was pretty fun, exciting time.
Absolutely. And now, as I understand it, in your negotiation with the Outdoor Channel, I hear you ask for, in quotes, one more thing that Willie thought was going to absolutely blow the whole deal up. Tell us about that.
That is true. So that conversation happened and we were excited because we were thinking, this is really like a 30-minute commercial on Outdoor Channel to our market about, our business. And so we really looked at it as a great way to sell more duck calls. But, and so Willie's like, look, this is just great marketing. Let's just do it, And I said, well, I feel like y'all should probably get a talent fee. This is your talent, you should probably get a talent fee. And he had, was just like, do not screw this up. This is a good deal for us. They're paying for everything. They're sponsoring the whole thing. That's enough. Don't screw it up. And so I said, I actually just read the book, Negotiate to Win. And I was like, this cannot hurt. Like, we can ask, they can always say no. And he's like, all right, well, just back off. If he just seems at all like he's going to back away, back off. Don't screw this deal up. So I went in there and the deal was done, and I got up the nerve and I said, hey, I really think the guys deserve a talent fee. And I put my number out there. It was not a whole lot of money, but I put the number out there and the guy said, okay, sure, done. And then Willie was like, God, we should ask for more money. Of course, then I was like, see, I told you, I tried to go for more. You held me back.
Well, you did all right. As I understand it, you got $30,000 for Phil, Jason, Willie, as an appearance fee, which is great. Now, how'd you determine the name for the first show?
Let's see. So originally it was Duck Commander. It was Benelli Presents Duck Commander. Well, then as that show was happening, we were kind of winning all the awards, and they had these Golden Moose Awards. We won the Golden Moose Awards, all these awards in the outdoor industry. And we got an email from, a guy from Hollywood, information@duckcommander.com. He's like, hey, I think you've got what it takes to have a big show. And so Willie called him back. I remember I was in the room. He's on speakerphone, and he's like, I saw your show, and he just like, you're going to have, if we do what I think this show is going to do, you're going to have billboards in Times Square. And we're like, yeah, right. But, we did really believe in it, and we did think we had something special. And we made a sizzle reel and pitched it around to all the networks and got offers from a lot of networks, which was really exciting. And ended up going with A&E, partly because I watched a show at that time called The Gene Simmons Family Jewels. And it was like a television show about Gene Simmons' family, which I was like, and they look like a great family, and it's like Gene Simmons, so obviously not a great family. But I was watching the show at the time, and A&E had a good 50-50 audience. They had an audience like 50% female, 50% male, which really fit what we felt like our demographic, because we're such a family show. And so we said yes to A&E, and then they're the ones who came up with the name Duck Dynasty. We submitted all kinds of names. We're friends with Luke Bryan, and he was early in his career at the time, and so we even had him make a little song that would go with one of our titles. I can't remember what the title. We tried to get Duckmen because we own Duckmen, so we were like, trademark Duckmen, let's name it Duckmen, but of course A&E didn't go for that. And so they came up with the name Duck Dynasty, and we were just like, we thought I'm not sure about that, but hey, we'll go with it, we'll trust it, and it turned out to be a very, very good decision.
Absolutely. And, you and Willie do the negotiations on behalf of the entire family, the contracts, the sponsorships, the television deals. Has there ever been a moment where that's been particularly challenging to get to the right solution?
Yes, that is always challenging. Of course, when you work in a family business and you want to represent everybody well. And so that is hard. And Willie and I, as a husband and wife team, we both have some strong opinions sometimes. So there can definitely be some strong opinions, and one thinks we should go one way, thinks we should go the other. But we tend to work pretty well because he is more of that like relationship person and all that. And I don't mind. I really probably had to learn this but I'll read the fine print, I'll read the contract, and I'll stick with it. Willie's more like, he reads the first round and it's like, oh, no, we won't. And I'm like, no, we're going to get there. Like, we're going to get there. Come on. We'll get our head down and I'll stick it out for the long haul till we negotiate to where we're all happy.
Well, you read the book, so you had to know how to negotiate, and you took that all the way to the bank. When your first episode of Duck Dynasty aired on A&E, what kind of impact, I'm really curious, what kind of impact did that have just almost overnight on duck call sales?
That was insane. That first year was absolutely insane. So we started airing in April of 2012. And that first year so duck call business is, seasonal, obviously, because you only sell duck call season happens in the fall and winter. And so, we kind of had a cycle for how we worked. And how's the company worked and everything, because we've been doing it for a long time. And then all of a sudden you have this television show that's running every night and every week. And you got a lot of people that are not duck hunters buying duck calls, And so that was really fun, but a real challenge. Our website crashed, I think 3 times, honestly, that first year because of we just weren't prepared at all. We started running a business 24/7, this warehouse. We were hired, if you could walk, we hired you at the time. We were just like, come, we need you. We literally had to work 24/7. We had to get, other warehouses and all that. And it was a really fun, exciting time, but it was also a little bit crazy. We had to make a video because one other funny piece of it is our show, it's a fun family show, and it appeared that we really weren't working very much because the show was always like the guys were messing around in the woods and weren't making duck calls. And so we'd get emails like, hey, y'all need to actually get to work and make some duck calls. I ordered my duck call 3 weeks ago and haven't gotten it yet. And so we had to make a YouTube video saying like, look, we're really working here. We walked you through the warehouse, promise. Work is happening. We are behind because we're trying to keep up with the demand, but it was a crazy time.
I'm just curious on this. If you could think back, what would have been your duck calls per day, before the TV show, and then what did it end up being?
The numbers, it was one of those things that, you say, oh, we had like 25% growth. It was like 800% growth. It was like just insane.
And I understand that this is a handmade product. So, how'd you go scaling up the business to keep up with that kind of demand? I mean, how'd you scale it?
Yeah, so that was hard because the wooden duck call was the original duck call, called the original, was the one, that Phil began with. But obviously, the wooden duck calls are so time intensive to make. But we still make all the duck calls right here. We put them together right here. They're all hand put together and blown here. But we did have to change some of our manufacturing to make it a little bit simpler, and went with some more plastic calls, and we changed a little bit of our reed system to make it really a lot easier to put together, which actually was a benefit to the customers too, because when you take it apart or whatever, it's much easier to put together than our classic.
You mentioned that you had computer breakdowns and, just handling the massive orders with stuff. How did you handle that as a leader, Korie? I mean, you got all this success, but you've got all this pressure at the same time. How did you balance the success pressure issue?
Yeah, I will say the amazing thing about Duck Commander, and it's still like this to this day, is like everyone who works with us can wear all the hats and is willing to wear all the hats and is willing to get in there and like, okay, we got a big order, we need to just get it done. And that's kind of how Willie and I, we've always run it. Phil and Kay ran it from day one. They're willing to do whatever it takes to make it happen. And in the early days, it was kind of like, literally, we would have a party and cook for people and invite them to come get an order, help us get an order out. But as it's gone on, I think it has, for us, it looks more like whenever everybody gets busy, like we're right there in there too, trying to help package orders or do what it takes to get the job done. So we really tried to do that. And then, make work fun, and our work and family, it's kind of all intertwined for us and always has been. And I don't think we would have it any other way.
So many times you start out small, you get big, and you can lose your way as you get big. How do you keep what is now a big business, a big company, how do you keep it small for the rest of the employees?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, there were pieces of it that we did lose our way because Duck Dynasty was so big and it became this like we were on like toddler underwear, it's like Duck Dynasty Chia Pets and Duck Dynasty everything. But then we have this brand Duck Commander that is a legitimate hunting company that was here 40 years before, and we hope is here 40 years after. And there was a moment there where we're just kind of on everything, and that oversaturation word that you hear, whatever, it happened to us. And so whenever the show ended, we had to say, okay, like, who are we at its core? Like, who are we as Duck Commander at the core, and who are we going to be 40 years from now? And, had to kind of relay that message to the customer that, like, hey, we're still here. Like, we didn't leave, that Duck Dynasty didn't change who we are and what we're about. That was a fun part of our life, and it was this like big, massive, snapshot out of our life, but Duck Commander remains what it is. And so I think we were at risk of that, and we did for a little bit have to kind of come back to the customer and say, no, don't forget who we are at our core.
You had one of the country's most popular television shows, and you did leverage the brand in a whole lot of different areas. How did you decide which way to go?
Yeah, so Duck Dynasty was a little bit different. It was out there. It was on everything, And Duck Commander, we tried to be a little bit more strategic about what made sense for our family. One of the fun ones that we did, I'll never forget. So we had an episode where Willie bought a winery.
You know what this is, Kay?
What?
Robertson Winery. I just bought it.
I really don't know what to say. It's not often that my boys buy something I can actually appreciate. This is beautiful.
Like back in the pioneer days when they had wine, Kay. This is the vineyard.
This is beautiful.
I ain't sure where the grapes went to, but hey, there's no problem. When in doubt, figure it out. That's the redneck way. I think I need to call in an expert. You should have called the expert before you bought this thing.
And I'll never forget when we did that episode, thinking, oh, I don't know, like this might be like too far-fetched or whatever. Well, it led to Duck Commander wine that we did with a wine company, Trinchero, out of Napa Valley. And it was the biggest selling wine in Walmart for, I think, 3 years running. And it ended up being this great product that spun out of that one episode. And it was just such a fun. Of course, we got to go out to Napa and do the wine tasting and all of that. And it was a great wine. And we sold it in Walmart for several years. And so things like that were not expected at all, to have a wine. But so I think part of it, being open to things that are unexpected. And some of the things we thought, oh, this was a sure deal. We didn't pick the right partners and didn't work. So, but I think looking for the right partners is probably a lesson that I learned in all of it is, you can have the best idea, but if you don't have the right partner to go along with it, it's not going to work.
Well, what would be 2 or 3 things you've learned about picking the right partner?
I think take your time in looking for that partner, and make sure you find somebody who knows what they're doing in that space. Someone can have success in one space, but maybe they don't really know what they're doing in another. And so I think there was some times when we had that where someone would come in and be like, oh, we did this, and we think we could do this for you and this, but it didn't necessarily translate. So I think looking for partners that have success in specific areas, but then also partners that align in your values, because that does matter, and it matters to us. It's not that, obviously we are people of faith, and faith informs everything we do, but business is business, of course, as well too. But values that align, honesty, integrity, those type of values are just really important in who you partner with.
That's some great insight there. And, you've got incredibly good business instincts, obviously, and you have the idea for the television show to grow the business, and it takes off like a rocket ship. What advice can you give leaders about following their gut?
That's such a good one. I think that's so important. Our daughter Sadie has a business, and she's so good at following her gut. She knows what God has given her, the passion that she has, and she follows it. And I've told her that, there's been times whenever I've my gut doesn't feel quite right, but gone for it, and it just never works. I just think following your gut is so critical and so key. And, stick to what you know, what you feel like God has put on you and put for you and in your business, and try not to stray from that. We know our market, we know our fans, and there have been times when I've been like, maybe, but someone convinced me, and I'm just like, it always comes back to that gut feeling. So I definitely think following your gut is a key.
How has being in the spotlight changed you as a leader?
Oh, that's a great question. I would hope to say that it hasn't. I think that for our family, one of the things we've talked about just so much with our kids is like, you are who you are, whether you're in the spotlight or whether you're behind the scenes, whether you're in your work or your home or whatever, and just being really true to who you are wherever you are, I think is so important. So I don't think that it has, and I kind of hope that it hasn't. And one of the things our daughter Sadie said one time, someone asked, like, how do you think, you kind of stayed grounded? And she was like, we're really the same people as home as we are in public. So that's just how it is. And so I hope to think that that's how we've lived our life.
Tell me about this phrase that I think your family uses, remember the Alamo. I know what remember the Alamo means. I've watched that movie. It's one of my favorites as a kid. What's it mean when you apply that to your family?
All right, so that goes back to whenever we first started the show, Duck Dynasty, and there was some of the family was a little unsure because, we are going into unknown territory, and there's this whole thing of oh, you're going to Hollywood. What's going to happen? Your kids are going to end up on drugs, and you're going to end up divorced, and it's this fear of Hollywood. And so we had some conversations about that, and we actually had a family meeting. We sat down and we were just like, this is something we feel like is going to be great for our family, right, for our company. We hope we point people to Jesus, which is what our family is all about. But if it's not good for us, then we just want it to go away. We don't want it to happen because we really had, our family values were what's most important. So we sat down as a family and we were like, how are we going to protect ourselves from that? And someone said, I think we should have a catchphrase that's if someone's getting off, someone's getting the big head, someone's forgetting what this is really about, we can just say that, and that's all we have to say. We don't say anything else. And Uncle Si, who's the crazy one of the family, says, remember the Alamo. And we're all look at him like, what? And he's like, that's it. Remember the Alamo. That's our saying. And so it had nothing to do with anything else, but it was the perfect saying for us. And Willie's oldest brother, Alan, bought us all refrigerator magnets that said, remember the Alamo, for us to just put on our refrigerator. And it was just a reminder to us to stay true to who we are and not let the fame or fortune or whatever might come change us.
That's great. When I interviewed Dude Perfect, they told me that their faith is what has kept their 5 founding members together through their ups and downs. How has faith played a part in how you actually go about leading? What you do every day with the people that you're privileged to lead?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because for us, it really does. Our faith affects everything. It's not something you do on Sunday morning and it's different when you come into work on Monday. It really affects our relationships, our marriage, our relationship with our kids, our relationship with the people that we work with. And so I think those principles that are true to faith of honesty, integrity, values, truthfulness, just all those things that the Bible teaches us are the way to live. We try to live that in our workplace as well. We actually have a saying that our family has always said is faith, family, ducks, in that order. And it's another kind of our family motto. It's faith, family, ducks, in that order. And, we always tell people ducks, that's interchangeable. That can be something else for you. But for us, faith, family, ducks, in that order is how we try to live. And interestingly, whenever we started the show, Duck Dynasty, we had the very first kind of promotional things. They made posters and billboards and all of this, and they put on the top of them, money, family, ducks. And it came, we got the prints for the first time. We had no idea that was the way they were going to advertise it. And it was this, they were trying to, show that we were successful, whatever, but it really bothered us because we did not, our family's not about the money. And so we took Sharpies and marked through everyone that said money, and we wrote faith on top of it. And so every autograph that we signed of those posters, we just marked through money and wrote faith on top of that.
Oh, that's great. In today's world, it's it's very polarizing. And, being a Christian, being a person of strong faith, it takes a lot of courage to be in public and do it. You actually, in every one of your episodes, you had prayer at the end, and there's always a good message that the family can take away from it. And I really thought that was great. And just recently, Jason Aldean just had a song out, where he's talking about a small town, wouldn't happen around here in a small town. And, people have asked him to take it off the air and whatever. Standing up for your faith, has that ever really caused a lot of controversy that you've had to deal with as a leader? And if so, how did you handle it?
Yeah. So the prayer at the end, the neat part about that was, it wasn't some big marketing strategy or plan. It's just what we do. And, they started filming. We planned to have a dinner at the end of the episode. And so, as we began the dinner, we said a prayer. And that just became a really powerful moment of the show for people and really impacted a lot of people in a lot of ways. But at the beginning of that, as Phil prays, he always says, "In Jesus' name, amen." It's part of, how we pray. And they were cutting out "in Jesus' name." And I don't even know that they knew that was important or they intended to, the editors or whatever, but that really bothered Phil, that "in Jesus' name" was not in there. And I'll never forget, he started kind of campaigning like, "I want you to put 'in Jesus' name' back in the show." And we were watching it one night and it said, "In Jesus' name, amen." And we were like, yes, we all cheered, we were so happy. But yeah, there are times when you definitely have to say, this is what I believe and this is who we are and this is important to us and stick with it. But the support we've received from, other people for our show and for everything's been amazing. We have people, as we walk through airports, people are like, "I'm praying for your family." So that's been really awesome.
Shifting gears for a minute, I want to take you back. What's a story from your childhood that shaped the kind of leader you are today?
Oh, that's a great question. So I grew up in a family business. My granddad and my dad were businessmen. We actually owned Howard Books that was sold to Simon & Schuster that published a lot of our Duck Dynasty books. So that was really cool. Another full circle moment. We owned a chain of discount stores called Howard Brothers Discount Stores and a chain of actually what ended up becoming Sam's Club. We had Super Saver. And so I grew up in a family business. And one thing that I loved just watching my granddad and my dad as businessmen was they were risk takers. They started a lot of businesses and there were a few of them that hit really big and our family was successful in that way. But a lot of them didn't, but they weren't bothered by that, and I think just seeing them be risk takers, and I've always tried to teach our kids that, like it's good. Taking a risk is good. There's a quote that I love. It's like, if you try and you fail, you're not a failure, you're a risk taker. And, I think I saw that in my family. My granddad was a risk taker. He tried a lot of things. And like I said, some success, but he had fun in every bit of it. He enjoyed it. He enjoyed the process. He was full of joy in whatever he was doing. And, one of the crazy things he did was he loved to write. So he was a songwriter as well. And so he started this country music band and he had these girls called the Steffen Sisters and they went on tour of Europe and I got to go as a babysitter. I was like 15 years old and I got to tour Europe. We went to all these little like country music festivals and bars and all that. And I was like 14, 15 years old traveling around Europe. And it had nothing to do with any other of his other businesses. It was just something he loved to do and wanted to do. And we went off and did it and I got to go do it with him. So I think that really shaped me to just have fun and follow your passions. If it's something you want to try, go for it. If you don't make it, get up and try something else.
I understand you've always been a big dreamer. And, when you were a teenager, you dreamt that you would be on the Johnny Carson show. And you actually end up on the Jimmy Fallon show. What was that like when you went on that show?
Yes, that is crazy. So I had a lisp as a kid. And I still had a lisp as a teenager, and I had a dream that I was going to be on the Johnny Carson show, and I had a lisp, and I was like, I really think I should fix this, because what if I ever get on the Johnny Carson show? And it ended up being Jimmy Fallon, and it was so much fun. He was really awesome behind, meeting us backstage and everything. And it was just a lot of fun. We did so many things that, were a dream. We were on all the major talk shows, and we got to travel and speak all around the country. We got to be at I love all the, what do you call the award shows, got to go to all the award shows and present and do all that fun stuff. And then our daughter Sadie did Dancing with the Stars, which was an absolute blast. So yeah, we've gotten to do some fun things in life for sure.
That's great. And you mentioned reading that book on negotiation and how it helped you. How did you go about building your business acumen as this business is just growing leaps and bounds, and you had to learn how to really run a business? How'd you do it, and how are you continuing to sharpen your skills?
Yeah, so I was really fortunate to have a family that had a family business. So my dad's really wise in some of that. So a lot of just asking questions of him and leaning on people who know more than I do. But I have also always been a big reader. So reading is definitely something that I always, learned so much from. And yeah, that Negotiate to Win book really did. I read it just before. I was like, I'm doing it. I'm going to implement this. So I think reading and then figuring out ways you can implement the things that you're learning from it is really important.
So you had millions of people tuning into Duck Dynasty every week. And then in April of 2017, you aired your final episode. Why'd you stop?
We had done it for 5 years. We did 130 episodes, and it was a lot. It was very busy, and it was fun and a whirlwind, but it just felt like time. One of the things that was challenging, I guess, about our show is we set up this show that's like around our family business right here, and then our lives were changing so much, but the show was still kind of set right here. We were doing Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel and all this kind of stuff, but the show still kind of was set in a very specific time period. And so it felt like how's the show going to change and evolve with us? Or do we just end it and that was a great run and all that. So we decided that it was time, and A&E felt like it was time. And they said, do you think it's time? We're like, we think it's time. Let's just go out while we're still in a really good place. And, we still live in our same town. We're still running Duck Commander, still doing all the same things we were doing. So it just felt like the right time.
How did it impact your business, your Duck Commander business?
So when the show ended, that we had reached a point of kind of this a little bit of oversaturation, because Duck Dynasty was when you went in Walmart, we were in every department. There was just, the beards were everywhere, and so Duck Dynasty was everywhere. So when the show ended, we did have to it was really a good time for us to kind of come back and say okay, what are our core values? What's really important to us? Who were we before and who are we still? And so there were some things that it was also a time of cleaning up. There were some licensing things that we had done that weren't working. We're like, all right, we gotta pull it back in, decide what's really important. Who are we going to be going forward? So I feel like the next couple of years were a little bit about that. We had some big successes and some that were not working, and trying to figure out what those things were, cleaning up some of that, and then we decided one of the things that had been really on my heart from after doing Duck Dynasty was just entertainment and how entertainment is shaping our culture. And so that's when we decided to start our production company, Tread Lively, which is something that we're doing now.
That's great. I want to ask you about that in a little bit. But I've had so much fun with this interview so far, and I want to have a little bit more with my lightning round of questions.
Okay.
So are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay. What's one word others would use to best describe you?
I think the word kind, because I have a book called Strong and Kind, and it's about two values that I wanted to instill in our kids. And so I hope they would say I'm kind.
What would you say is the one word that best describes you?
Strong.
What's your biggest pet peeve?
Litters. I just hate people who throw trash outside.
What's something about West Monroe, Louisiana that most people wouldn't know?
We love our town. So what would people not know? It's I think people think it's this little bitty small town, but it's really got so much going for it. We love it. I don't know what the thing that they wouldn't know about it, but come on to West Monroe. We're pretty proud of our town.
When was the last time you went duck hunting?
Oh, this is embarrassing. I went deer hunting last year. I actually shot a deer last year. That was fun. Duck hunting, it's been 5-10 years. It's been a while. I'm not a duck hunter.
Favorite memory from one of the Duck Dynasty episodes?
We did an episode where our son, we filmed the episode where our son got married, and he and his wife, Mary Kate, and that was so much fun.
Where's your happy place?
We have a little beach area outside our house. I mean, it's a pond, so it's not really a beach, but we brought some sand in, and I love going down there with the grandkids.
Now, if I turned on the radio in your car, what would I hear?
Probably an Audible book. I'm listening to Younger Next Year right now, so I'll turn 50 this year, so I'm listening to Younger next year.
What's something about you that few people would know?
I'm a pretty much of a risk taker. I love to have fun. I've parachuted. I love to snow ski. I don't have a lot of fears in that regard. I love to try new things like that.
Well, that's the end of the lightning round, and I just have a few more questions, and we'll wrap this up, okay? So in addition to the Duck Commander, I understand you also, and you mentioned this earlier, that you work with your daughter, Sadie, and you help manage her career. She's got a huge platform with over 5 million followers on Instagram, which is amazing. What's she up to, and what's the biggest challenge you face as a mother-daughter duo on the business front?
So yes, she started a company called Live Original, and her whole purpose is just to be a sister and a friend to people. She feels really called to that, and so she writes books, she does blogs, she has an app called LO Sister. She has a conference coming up in September called the LO Sister Conference. She has a podcast, and that's been so much fun to see her just really follow her dream and do all the things that God has placed on her heart. The biggest challenge, we work really, really well together, honestly. One of the things that I think is really unique about Sadie is from a very early age, she will ask advice, and she will tell you her problems, and she will let you speak into them, which I think is a real asset because it's helped her to be really wise beyond her years. So that's been great. There have been times I remember when she first moved to Nashville, I thought, I don't need to be her manager and mom, and we should probably get another manager so we can have that separation. And it only lasted about a year, and then we're like, we can really just do it ourselves.
That's so great to have that kind of relationship. Now, and you also you mentioned this earlier, you own a production company called Tread Lively, and you have a new movie, as I understand it, coming out in September called The Blind. Tell us about that. Give us a little sneak preview.
We do. We are so excited. So yes, one of the things that our show really kind of showed me was how the power of entertainment, of shaping our culture and we're being shaped by entertainment every single day. And so we did want to start a production company to put out more good content. And we're starting with a movie about our family story, which was kind of a big thing to start with, about your own family story. We were like, oh, do we tell our story first? But we decided to go for it. And it's Phil and Kay's early days. So their childhood up to really the beginning of Duck Commander. So it's very different from what you see on Duck Dynasty. It's the hard years. And they went through 10 really hard years that most people would have quit. It would have never made it. And so their story is the story that really made our family what it is today. And when Jesus intervened in their life, their whole life changed, and Duck Commander was invented and all that. So this is that story.
I can't wait to watch that movie. And you've gone through so many different challenges, so many different businesses, different brands that you've created or sub brands that you've created. And you did all those episodes in that 5-year period where it's just concentrated. How do you manage through the chaos of a season like that, of 5 seasons of TV? How do you manage your time and stay focused?
Yeah, so the first year of that, it was insane. And whenever we go all in for something, we go all in. We're like, we're going to do this right. So I feel like that first season, we filmed that we filmed probably each episode 4 times because we were like, okay, we got to get it right. We got to fine tune it. So I think there is a time of like, you are just all in. There's no balance. There's no like, we're going to make this work and we got to do it. Then once we did that, we said, okay, we set some boundaries for ourselves. We said, we're only going to film Monday through Thursday. We're only going to do 30 episodes a year, even though they were wanting us, they were airing our shows back to back and they wanted, more. But after that first, run, we were like, all right, this is not sustainable. We have a family, we have a life, and that's what's most important. So then we set the boundaries. So I do think in any business, there are going to be the times when you're going to be running and you're going to have to just get it. But then you got to come back to like, where can we have have a life and make sure something that we can sustain. And so we did that. We went back and negotiated and said, we're not filming Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. We only do 30 episodes a year. And that made it sustainable for us for the next 5 years to keep going.
Yeah. Well, you walk the talk on your faith, family, and ducks. That was the way to really do that. And I have the last question here. What's one piece of advice, Korie, that you would give to some aspiring leader?
I think just go for it with all your heart. If you believe in something, go for it. Don't give up. I think there's a piece of it. I talked about risk taking. I think being willing to take the risk, but then there's another part that I think is equally important in businesses and making a business that's sustainable and that's contentment. Being content where you are, and so you give it time to grow. Had Phil and Kay not been content with Duck Commander when it was making $12,000 a year or $20,000 a year, and they had quit and just moved on to something else, we would have never seen the rewards these years later. So I think there are pieces of it where, especially in this generation, where it's like everything's so fast. Just be willing to jump out there and take the risk, but also be content if it doesn't immediately make a hit. Be content, stick with it, and stay with it long enough to where you can find the success.
That's great advice. And well, Korie, I have to tell you, I really admire your honesty, your directness, just the joy you have when you answer questions. I mean, the fact that you smiled all the way through this podcast, I think that's part of your personality. And I want to thank you so much for sharing your insights, because you really have a lot of them. And it's been very powerful, and I've learned a lot.
Thank you so much. Really, just honored to be here. This was great. It was really fun to talk to you.